Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's WebStorm webinar. I'm Paul Everett, JetBrains Developer Advocate. I'll be your host. Y'all are in for a treat today. WebStorm is a JetBrains IDE for web and JavaScript development. For years now, that's also meant full stack JavaScript on the server, which means databases. And as many of you know, JetBrains has this, I'll just say, badass IDE for database development called DataGrip. And the DataGrip team is the one responsible for the database tools and the SQL plugin for WebStorm that many of you are familiar with. That is the topic for today's webinar. And we have our colleague, Maksim Sobolevskiy, DataGrip team lead, here to show us all the magical superpowers you're about to get. Welcome, Max.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hello, everybody. Yeah, Paul already introduced me. My name is Max. I'll tell you again. And I'll be happy to show some cool features from the database plugin of WebStorm. And I'm pretty sure that even if you are super familiar with it, you will learn something new today. I bet you.
I'm pretty sure, too. I've seen this movie before. A number of years ago, Max and I were at a PG Conf, I think it was, in New Jersey. And I had to go after Max on a presentation. You never go after Max on a presentation. His presentation was fantastic, really opened my eyes about the sweet spot for DataGrip. Max, you'll explain what it does kind of specifically later, but for now, how's DataGrip doing?
Well, we are fine. I don't know what to share with you. Like the usage, like we have a big user base and it's constantly growing, and people are coming not from only from database world, but from the software developing world, and especially having that we have our plugin in all the other JetBrains IDEs. Of course, the people of various backgrounds are using our tooling, and we are happy with that.
And from a feature perspective, it really feels like DataGrip is reaching that, feature completeness part. I know for years and years, there was that one ticket sitting out there labeled MongoDB.
Yeah, it was a couple of years, maybe 3 or maybe 4 years ago. We finally added the support for MongoDB, and special thanks to Ludmila Kornilova, who will also help us today with answering all the questions. And now we have another ticket of that kind, is a Redis support. And we are even started working on that. So we announced it in the U-Track, but never publicly. So yeah, maybe that will be good news for some of our attendees. And there are also maybe some other technologies we're not supporting yet, like DynamoDB or Presto, whatever. And even in our core functionality, there are lots of features which needs to be implemented yet. And especially having that many people are coming from the data analysis world, like business intelligence world. So they're not even software developers, and they have a little bit another perspective on how they work with data and with tables, with SQL, and whatever. So we have so much work to do. So I cannot say that we are on this top, but of course we cover some core functionality, but there's much more things to implement.
Right, and I was going to ask you, do you feel like there are still hills to climb? You're certainly right about the data science part. Let's kind of give the audience a chance to weigh in. Hey, audience, we're looking over at you in the chat right now. Anybody doing databases for data science? If so, speak up, tell us the kinds of things you're doing, and we'll try and comment on it a little bit later. If there was ever a webinar where I should just shut up, talk less, and let the show begin, it's this one. So let's proceed with the slides. All right. We'd like to make this webinar as conversational and live as possible. Max and I have a lot of fun together. We'd like you to have fun as well. So if you have any questions at any time during the webinar, go ahead and ask them. We're broadcasting to YouTube and to Twitch, so we can answer on both sides. If you have any questions, don't wait till the end. Go ahead and ask them. As Max mentioned, we have folks on the DataGrip team and the WebStorm team available to answer. I'll look over occasionally and answer some things as well. And then we'll take some of the questions that I'm not good enough to answer, and Max will take little breaks during the talk and ask me if I have any questions from the audience. So point is, don't wait until the end. Ask your questions as soon as you have them. Usually the first question is all, and I joke about this every time because it works every time. 3 minutes from now, somebody's going to ask, is this recorded? I've got to leave early. Yes, it's being recorded. It's YouTube. As soon as this is done, it'll basically be available, but we will also announce it on the WebStorm blog. Max, maybe you can make a post of this over on your blog and Twitter as well.
Yeah, we can just make a repost. So just if you follow any kind of social media of WebStorm or DataGrip, you will
sure. That's right. If you just at us, like Max will appear and Sasha from our team will appear, and we'll answer the question. So, all right, now we're all set. Let's begin. Max, let's see some badass database development in WebStorm.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, for this super cool introduction. I hope you all can see my screen. This is just a super plain WebStorm project, but we are focusing on this thing, which is called database tool window. This is actually the main tool window where you manage your databases. So if you have any kind of databases in your project, you can add these databases as data sources into the database window. But let's start from the very beginning, how you actually get this window into your WebStorm. This is not super straightforward because unlike all the other IDEs, WebStorm isn't packed with database plugin by default out of the box. And if you want to install this plugin, you should go to Preferences, Plugins, and here you can go to Marketplace and find lots of plugins, by the way, but what we actually need is database tools and SQL for WebStorm. So you are searching for this plugin, you install it, and if you have the all product pack license, you won't need to pay any more for this plugin. And if you have the DataGrip license as well, you don't need to pay for the plugin. But if you don't have either of them, you need to pay a little bit to use this plugin inside this WebStorm. So we can check the pricing at our website. It usually covers the difference between our normal price of the IDE and the price of the WebStorm, which is a little bit lower. So anyway, it's not more expensive than WebStorm, of course. So you need to install this plugin, and as soon as you install it, you have this tool window here. So to open this tool window, you can go to Windows and find the database here, and here we have database. But by the way, I have Command 2, the shortcut for opening this tool window, because I use it a lot, but that's not default. So by default, you don't have the shortcut for this tool window, but you can, of course, customize it as you can customize anything in our IDEs. Another way, by the way, to open this tool window is to use this stripe if you want it, or you can go to Find Action and type database and open it. So what is Find Action? It will be covered a little bit later. Okay, so we have the database tree here. So the database explorer, where you can see schemas, tables, and all the other objects. And let's see what capabilities are here in this database explorer. So you can add various of data sources here. So here is the list of databases we support. It is a huge list. So maybe for WebStorm developers, the most important are MySQL, MongoDB, and maybe Postgres and SQLite. They're all here. So in this list, you see the databases that we are directly support. What does it mean? It means that we write our own queries to retrieve the metadata from the database. We support the syntax. We write our own parsers to highlight the syntax errors in your code. So this support is something we built in. There is another list of databases which are maybe not so popular, but some of them are still popular. This we call basic support. It means that you can connect to these databases from WebStorm. You can write queries, you can see data, but there is a JDBC driver of each of these databases, and most of functionality is based on the functionality of these JDBC drivers. So if something is wrong in this driver, well, that's the issue of the driver. And as well, we are not highlighting very precisely what syntax errors you have writing the scripts in these databases. So, okay, this is what about basic support, but the major databases are in the list of complete support. So as soon as you create your data source, you can see various options for this data source. For example, let's take my Postgres data source. So general is the connection details, everything is more or less clear. If you go to the options tab, you can use several important things here. For example, read-only. Read-only means that your data source will be actually read-only. You will not be able to run queries against this data source, like updates or inserts that are not possible. And we have to say that we implemented this read-only mode by our own. So we even analyzed the connections between various routines. So for example, if the function calls the function, calls the function, calls the function, which calls the update statement, will not run you to run this function as well. So read-only will not let you run any update queries. Good for production data sources. What else? This is how your search path appears in the query console. This is not super important, so let's skip it. So single session mode means that everything goes through one connection, and lots of other options. What kind of options I should highlight here? Maybe warn when editing outdated DDL. I'll check it. It means that IDE will actually warn you if somebody in third-party place changed the source code of the routine, and DataGrip didn't know about that. So every time you open the routine, we load the metadata, the cached version of this routine, but then we'll check the database if something is changed, and we'll warn you about that. So SSH and SSL options are here, and here is very important tab where you can choose which particular schemas, which particular databases you want to be presented in your Database Explorer. Many other tools, they by default show all the schemas and all the databases here, but we chose another UX approach. You can just select just what you need, and for these particular schemas, we will load the metadata, which is going to be used later for completion navigation. We call this process introspection, and this introspection actually helps us to provide like the first-class user experience for code completion. Maybe you know this about WebStorm, and in SQL you will get the same. Okay, so this was the data source and drivers dialog. Should I save everything? Yes. So when you open your database schemas and databases nodes, you see that there are lots of objects here, more or less the same as in all the other tools. If I open the tables, I see all the tables I have in my schema. What I can do here, I can just start typing and see which particular tables are highlighted with my matched text. So if I type actor, I see the tables highlighted in actor. By the way, what we are currently working now is the ability to filter objects here. So you will see only filtered objects when you perform a quick search. But for now, you get the only the highlighting. What else? Colors. You can color your data source in any color, for example, in reds, which actually means that everything related to this data source will be colored in red. And in combination with read-only mode, that's a very good thing to establish for your production data sources, because you will always understand that you are running your queries against production data source. Because, for example, if I create the query console where I write query, it will also be highlighted in red. So I will always know that I'm in the context of the very important data source. But I will now decolorize it because I don't need it. No color. Okay. So that's maybe the most important features of the we call Database Explorer. But if you want to learn more, we can go here and take various options how we display all the objects in the database tree. Should you group the schemas, or you want to have all the objects in the plain tree? So you can just experiment with these options, which are available under the gear icon over here. Okay, so this is the query console, the main concept of database development in WebStorm or in DataGrip. To create this console, query console, you can go to New Query Console, or there's the shortcut Shift-Command-L. And oh, by the way, shortcuts. Okay, so let's try the following. When I press any kind of a shortcut, I voice it, but there is a way to make you to see it as well. So for this, we need to go to Plugin, to Marketplace, and go for Presentation Assistant. Okay, Presentation Assistant. By the way, there are lots of plugins here, so you can check. There is a plugin for nearly every use case. So for my use case is to show you my shortcuts. I install my plugin, that plugin, blah, 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 I accept it. Okay. And here, after that, I install the plugin. Yeah, you see that my shortcuts are now visible here. So the macOS version or the Windows or Linux version, they are all there. So again, Shift-Command-L is the shortcut for opening the query console. The query console is just a temporary file, which is, by the way, stored over here in scratches and consoles. They are over here, but they are supposed to be kind of a temporary, so you use them for writing some stuff and you forget about them. You don't need to save them directly. They are automatically saved with everything in our IDE. So I open my query console and let's create our own query, our first query. And our first query, of course, will be a select statement. So I can type as to select wildcard from actor. Okay, so the code completion helps me here. I press Command Enter and I get the result. By the way, what we are trying to advocate for is for using live templates. Live templates is kind of a code snippets you can use for lots of things you are doing every day. So, for example, for select, for custom select, for the simple select, we have the live templates. Select SEL. You just need to type the 3 letters, press tab, and here you are. The code snippet is invoked. If you press Command J in your query console, you see all the live templates which are available in this context. So, for example, if I want to use the, I don't know, ints live template, I can press Enter, and my live template is here. So I choose the table, I choose the column list, code completion, thank you very much, and I input my values. But I personally prefer not to press Command J. I prefer to use the abbreviation. So I tap SEL, press tab, and I'm here. So if I want to customize these templates, it's also possible. I go to Settings, I go to Live Templates, whoop, whoop, Live Templates. Yeah, they're here. So you can see that for SQL, we have lots of templates. So for example, let's take a look on SEL, the most simple live template. So the template text, and here is the table. It means that you should put table here, and here is the end where the cursor will be placed after the template is invoked. So for example, what I can do, I can cut it off and make it here. So for example, I want my cursor to be placed near the wildcard. I press OK, and from that point, my live template is changed and cursor is placed here. Why here? Because the wildcard can be actually expanded. Alt-Enter, I hope you all know this shortcut. Maybe this is the number 2 important shortcut of all the other IDEs and WebStorm in particular. Alt-Enter. Every time you want to change something in your code, I'm pretty sure that you know this about the common JavaScript functionality, but in SQL it works as well. So you press Alt-Enter. What you got? You got a couple of intentions. So first intentions tells you that you can convert it to subquery. Okay, yes, it's done. But the other intention tells you that you can expand the column list. You can expand the column list, and you actually see all the columns expanded from the active table. So I really advise you, every time you see that something can be changed, try Alt-Enter, and that'll be super fine. And by the way, this expand column list that also works not only for tables, but for only tables with joins. So let's add some join here. Join. By the way, you can see that the code completion is really smart, and it understands that you have foreign keys in your tables, and that's why it offers me to use this relational table, which is film actor. I can just press enter, like the full line code completion. I'm fine. If I want to join film, yes, I'm here again. So creating queries with joins is really fast with WebStorm and DataGrip as soon as you have the foreign keys established in your database. So I have this query here, and if I put my caret to the wildcard, again, Alt Enter, export column list. What I have all the columns expanded. And these columns are taken not from the actor, but from the actor and from the fields. And as you can also see, with the column names which have ambiguous names, there is a qualification. So DataGrip understands, or WebStorm, sorry, I'm so used to tell DataGrip. So our IDE understands that you have a conflict here. That's why the column name is qualified with the alias FA. So for example, I can press Alt Enter again and unqualify identifier. And what happens in that case? Our identifier is marked in yellow because the IDE understands that the name is ambiguous. So before you actually run your query, WebStorm will highlight you which particular names, for example, are ambiguous, or which particular names, for example, are absent. So if I do something like this, again, my column name will be red. Before you actually run the query, you understand which objects can be used in this query and which objects cannot be used in this query. If you want to qualify everything, you can just select everything, press Alt Enter, press Qualify, and everything will be qualified with the needed alias. If you don't like this F alias, you can press Shift F6, which is the rename shortcut, and you can type F1, for example. And this alias will be renamed throughout the whole query because WebStorm actually understands that this is not just a text, this is just a reference. And that's why it can be renamed throughout the whole query with no problems. Okay, so let's delete a couple of columns here so we have a more neat query with, oh, by the way, another, no, let's postpone this feature to the data editor section. Okay, so this is my query. I can type this thing, for example, something like this. And let's make another query. Select from actor, maybe where actor ID. Oh, by the way, yeah, another way of complete code. I like it very much, and I always preach for them. Abbreviation completion. AI goes for actor ID. FN goes for first name. LN goes for last name. LAN now goes for last name. So you can use any type of abbreviations. It will speed up your work really in a great way. So something like this, order by. Yeah, OB goes for order by. Yeah, I like it very much. Something like this. If I run the query, I got the query chooser, as we call it. So if you have several queries in your query console, you don't need to select the particular query to run. You just put the caret, you press Command Enter, and that's it. But if you have several queries, this chooser offers you to run this particular query or to run the whole script. So I can choose if I want to run 2 queries or 1 query. If I run 2 queries, I obviously get 2 results. And for example, if you have the subquery, let's check it. Something like this. If I press Command Enter here, there is another option to choose the subquery, the big query, and the whole script. If I run the whole script, I got obviously I get 2 results. You can customize this behavior. You see that this is the small tiny button called Customize, and it will navigate you to the query execution settings. So execute is the main action. It has its shortcut Command Enter, and it has various options here. Ask what to execute, actually, the option to show this particular chooser. And what I do like, I like to use another execute action, for example, execute number 2. And when inside the statement, I can tell that please execute smallest statement. So don't ask me, just execute the statement under the caret. I can assign a new shortcut for here, execute number 2, add keyboard shortcut, Shift Command Enter. Okay, it's already used somewhere. Command Alt Shift Enter. Okay, it's used only in database results, so for query console it's fine. So now I have Alt Shift Enter for execute number 2. And if I press Alt Shift Enter over here, only this query will be executed. So no chooser, nothing. But if I press Command Enter, the chooser appears. So this flow can be really flexible. You can customize it in any way you want. So now we have 2 queries and 2 results. Here we have result number 7, which goes from the first query. It has this vague name because we have lots of joins, and there is a tricky way to name the tab. You can write a command. So if you type something like result1 here, and here I can type something result2, and then I run all these two queries. I got tabs named accordingly. So again, if you want to name the tab of your query, you can just put any kind of command here, and this command automatically goes to the results tab. So this is my result number one. Actor ID, first name, last update, and another actor ID. I don't need it. And again, I run two queries. And what I can do next, I can compare result 2 and result 1 because they have like the similar number of columns. So I can push this tiny button, compare data, result 1, and choose to result 2. And there will be a window opened which shows me which particular rows are mutual between two results and which rows are not mutual between two results. So that's the ability to compare data. We can also use the so-called in-editor result mode. So let's use it. So I'll have this window. This is a small tiny button, in-editor results. What it means? It means that if you run your query, the results are populated just on the bottom of the query, just under the query. Yeah, that's the correct word. So, and if I do it here, I have a result here. So my display scale now is quite big, so I wouldn't say that it's super handy to have these results. But again, when you have a big screen and you want to have kind of a notebook flow, that's a cool feature to use. So okay, these results can be closed, obviously. What else? Let's speak about text editor a little bit more. Every time you write your queries, as I mentioned before, the WebStorm actually understands which particular objects are used in your query. And that's why if WebStorm doesn't know about the object, it will be highlighted in red, like something like this. Of course, we don't have this table, and that's why we don't have this qualificator, we don't have this column names and whatever. But that's not only about syntax highlighting and understanding that you have objects or you don't have these objects. It's about the whole concept of resolve, let's call it like this. So this actor table is resolved by IDE, which actually means that you can get some information about this table I accidentally had now. So if you just put the caret on the table, you will get the DDL of that table. So you will understand what particular DDL needs to be run to create this table. You see the types of the columns, the ranges of these columns, some grants here, and as well. You can invoke it not only with the mouth, but with the pressing of F1. This is the quick documentation. And if I go to show table preview, I even can have the preview of the data of that table. So if you want to know more about the table, more about the data, you don't need to switch windows. You can do it inside this pop-up. What else? If I press Command B, I'm navigated to the DDL of the object. So any particular object has the ability to press Command B and navigate to its DDL, where you can change this DDL or like recreate the objects or something like this. So Command B is the shortcut for seeing the DDL in the separate editor. There is another shortcut called Alt-Shift-B. It will highlight the object in the database Explorer. So anytime you see something like, for example, this film ID column, Shift Command B, I press it, and this column is highlighted in my micro soon be out of the battery. Okay, I'm fine. So again, Shift Alt B is the shortcut to show you the particular object in the database Explorer to understand more context about that. And the third navigation shortcut and navigation action for the database object is to show data. It works for tables, of course. So if I put my caret here, I press F4, I'm navigated to the data editor, as we call it. So the table where you can see the data. And the same, by the way, happens with the actor, with the database Explorer. So if I double click on the table is open. Because people coming from some other tools, they sometimes request, we need to populate the data, we need to write the selects, please give us generated selects, and we actually have it. So if you go to the SQL scripts, you have various scripts that can be generated from the table. like select first and rows from a table, boom, and I'm here. So address 45, and I'm done. And by the way, these are also live templates. They can be customized. But if you just want to see the data from the table, you don't need to generate any kind of code. You just double click it and you see. Okay, let's go to the actor table and see what actually our data editor can do and how it can help you to explore and to update your data in table view. So I will close all the other tool windows, so it will be a little bit more handy to see all this stuff. Okay, so this is the, as we call it, data editor. I will close all the other tabs. Let's explore what we have here. Here is the paging. So by default, DataGrip, of course, doesn't retrieve all the data from the results or from tables, because, for example, let's imagine the table has millions of rows. We don't want it to retrieve it. You don't want to retrieve it. So basically, by default, I don't remember, we retrieve 500 of rows. So 200 are less than 500, so that's why we are fine. But you can go to custom and limit the page size to any amount. For example, if I choose 10 here, I got 10, of course. And then I have the paging interface. So you can go to next page, next page, next page. And every time you press next page, we actually run the new query. And if you want to run the query, if you want to see the query of the data editor, you can always do this with the help of gear icon, view query. Yeah. So you can see that limit 11, offset 30 means that we are now showing the third page.
Hey, Max, when you get a chance, let's take the first batch of questions.
Yeah, of course.
You can wrap up this part if you want to wrap up without pagination.
Of course.
You want to go ahead and take some now?
Yeah, why not? Of course.
All right,
yes.
Cool. And the DataGrip team has been doing a great job of answering a lot of the questions in the chat. Some I think would be worth getting onto the recording. Easy first one, I hope. And of course, it's going to be a question about Rider. The Rider people show up everywhere. Is this the same in Rider?
Yeah, it is the same in Rider. And by the way, 3 months ago, I had the same webinar for the Rider audience. I don't know why you missed it, but yeah, the short answer is yes, it is available in Rider. And SQL Server support is also the first class support in our IDE. So please take a look.
All right. Next question. RDS support. Like if you're using Postgres in AWS, over the years, I think we've added some features to make that a first-class experience, like how to get through a Bastion host and stuff like that. You don't have to show it, just a brief statement about the use of RDS.
Yeah, of course it's supported. So it's just the same Postgres. So we sometimes have some connection issues, but we're trying to solve them. So basically, all the cloud-hosted databases are, of course, supported.
But speaking of which, there was a question specifically about Azure Cosmos.
Oh, I remember. I don't have the particular answer now about the Azure Cosmos. I remember we had some issues with that, and I don't remember the state of that issues. But what I can say that it's not in our roadmap for the closest release. So if there were issues, they are still there.
So if in the channel, if you want to follow up with DataGrip about it, send a tweet, and Max can probably point you at a ticket, and the ticket will probably tell you JDBC problem. It usually winds up being something like that.
Yeah, that happens frequently.
Okay, a general question from me, and then a specific question from the audience, which we might get you to demo on your way back to resuming the presentation. The general question for me: over the years, have you had a feature that you implemented, rolled out, and then kind of changed your mind about how it should be done? I seem to remember a few years ago, the way you kind of automatically execute versus manually executing and things like that, you changed your mind a little bit about.
I don't actually understand what you are talking about with executing, but I have the answer for that question.
Sure.
Of course, it happened. Like maybe the brightest example is how we build the UX for choosing schemas. I mentioned it already. So you don't see all the schemas here. you need to either click on this 204 and choose all the schemas here, or you need to go to the data source properties and choose all the schemas here. That was the tough place, because in many other tools you don't need to do that. You always see all the schemas in databases by default, and our users didn't actually understand why they don't see this or that schema. And actually we tried many ways to like build a good UX here. And frankly speaking, we're not still sure that it is perfect, because we have still got some requests why and where my databases are. And we said, okay, do you see this 204 thing? You need to click it. So yeah, maybe that is the brightest example of maybe not the best solution from scratch. But now for several years we have this, and the types of, like, the amount of questions is nearly zero. So more or less we now believe that this is fine. But yeah, that was a good example.
All right, last point, and maybe you can demo this. So let's switch back to your screen. The question is, how can one quick peek a related record when clicking a cell like in dbeaver? I'd like to see more info about the related record from the related table without writing joins. Is it possible?
Yeah, thank you. That is the good question to give my presentation back.
Okay.
Yeah, in dbeaver you have this small tiny button near all the records, but we actually thought that having a button, a dedicated button on the record, is a little bit overwhelming. So the functionality is there, but it's not with the button. It's not implemented with the button. So like Nick Wahlberg, number 2, where you can go go to the context menu and go to, and here, along with the shortcuts, you have many options. So what you actually need to do is to go to referencing rows, and now I'm navigated to the film actor table, and the actor ID 2, Nick Wahlberg, and all the relations with the film ID here. So for example, film ID 132, and I can do the same thing. I can go to the film records. So again, go to and reference rows, and I'm here. Usually we are advocating for the shortcuts, not for the mouse using. So let's repeat it just with the shortcut, and you will see that it's not as clumsy as maybe it appeared before. So Joe Swan, I press Command B. Okay, I go to the DDL. I don't remember the shortcut, by the way. Referencing rows, Alt F7. So I'm Alt F7. I'm here with the film actor table. What is the film? 434, Command B, and I'm here with a film table. So when you master the shortcuts, it can be really easily, and you can go to the opposite direction. So I can go Alt F7, go to film actor. This film 434. I see all the actors. 6 and actor. Command B. This is the Mary Tandy. So mastering the shortcuts, you can use navigation between related records. Okay, let's go back to the flow and see what this toolbar can offer us. So reloading, more or less clear. You can add rows. By the way, add rows. You can delete rows. You can delete existing rows, and you can do some some updates here. And every time you update the data, it's not populated in database immediately. These changes are local. So as soon as the change is highlighted, it means that this is not change which is reflected in database. It's just a change which is reflected in DataGrip. And you can preview which particular statements will be run when you submit these changes. And when you submit these changes, I don't want to delete this record, by the way, so I want to revert it. So I select the row, I press revert, and the deletion is reverted. I can even revert this, and it will be reverted. You can do, by the way, multiple updates. So you can go here and make all of them jinxes. And as you can see in the preview, everybody will be updated. If you want to, you can even copy paste here. So for example, like that makes no sense, but anyway, so I can copy these values and paste them here. And by the way, the paste works from any kind of CSV. So you can just copy the CSV file or see the piece of the CSV file and paste into data editor in WebStorm. So this is kind of a small Excel. Let's revert like this, for example. I want to revert these changes, and Julia and Tora, they'll be saved. So when I press submit, these changes are like gone to my database, and now they're in my database. Okay, the DDL button will navigate you to the DDL, obviously, and the data button from the DDL will navigate you back to data. So this is the search, the ability to find any kind of text data on your table. So if you press search, and you can type Nick, and you can filter rows, and all the nicks will be found. If you don't filter rows, these nicks will be just highlighted. So again, when you need to filter data, you can use the text search. What is really important to understand and to know that this text search uses only the current page. So because it's the client search. So if you want to use this text search to find that data throughout the whole table, you can just press all here, and you will be sure that all the rows are loaded, and the text search will go through all the rows. By the way, another way to find data is to use filtering, which is database-based filtering, SQL-based filtering. So, for example, Johnny, I want to find all the Johnnies. I can go here, filter by, first name is Johnny, and I'm here. But in that particular case where we just applied the filter with the where clause, the new query actually is run. So if you, for example, have a long queries, be careful with that. And also, this filter doesn't work with the results, of course. And if you want to filter something in the result, use the text search. As you can see, we have the order by here, so you cannot put some kind of a filtering here. You can do some ordering here. And this is just a pure SQL. So you can do, by the way, anything you want to in this particular, in this particular field. So it can be something like this. Okay. You can even add some conditions, last name, like Alan, I'm here. So yeah, these are kind of two fields which just helps you to write SQL. You can always check the query. I already showed you this, view query. That's it. So this is all the queries you got. Ordering, yeah, another interesting thing about ordering. If you click on the column, obviously the data set will be all sorted accordingly. And as you can notice, every time I click on the column, the order by text field is populated with some kind of a condition. But you can also use the sorting on the client side. Like the search can be performed on the client side, and the sorting can be performed on the client side. If I go here and I turn off sort via order by, my ordering, my ordering works, but nothing actually is populated here, and we don't even see the field here. It means that the ordering happens on the client side, not on the SQL side. That can be useful, especially again if you have long queries or big amount of data, or on the result set. Of course, by default, it happens on the client side, not on the database side. Okay, that was the search. Another very, very, very important drop down on the toolbar, it includes various extractors. I'll take a sip of water and I'll explain what it is. Extractors help you to extract or export, let's say, your data in various ways. How it works. So, for example, the first extractor is SQL inserts. If I choose the SQL inserts, and then I just like select some data, I press copy, and then I go to my query console, I paste, and as you can see, my table is represented as a batch of insert statements. For example, if I choose the where was my table? If I choose the updates and I copy, and again, guess what? I have a lot of updates statements here. We have lots of text data. So for CSV, TSV, it's more or less obvious. JSON, for example, if I choose JSON, I press copy, and then I create the scratch file JSON. Voila, my data is exported in JSON format. And actually, you can create your own custom format for this. You can go to scripts directory and see that these extractors are just Groovy scripts. So you can go to JSON Groovy scripts, see what it is about. Sorry for scaling. You can adjust the script according to your own needs and get your own data. And that actually what happened with some other formats. So many people asked us, can you please add like the pretty extractor so I can send my data in the messenger? And finally, one of our developers said, okay, I can create this extractor. So this is just a Groovy script for pretty extractor. And as soon as you add this script to this particular folder, it starts working. So pretty, what it does, again, let's hide my database window. I go here, pretty, I copy, and then I paste, and my data looks like this. So if you need any kind of custom text format for your data, just go to scripts directory, add your own script there, and you are fine. Okay, this is the, by the way, these extractors are not only used for clipboard, obviously, but they're used for extracting your data to files. So if I press here, export data, I can see the source I'm using, I can see the extractor, and I can see the output file. So if I will export this data to file, this export mechanism will use these formats of the extractor. Where there is another extractor here, which is called Excel, and obviously it is not available for copying because it's a binary extractor. But again, if you want to extract your data in Excel format, it's also possible here. What else? You can not only export your data to some file or clipboard, you can export it to the database, to some other database, and I want to show you that. For example, let's go back in time and run this particular query. Select from Postgres or whatever. This is the result one. This result can be exported, as I showed you, or it can be imported to some other database. So I can click here and choose the target schema, and in my case, it can be MySQL schema. So again, this is the PostgreSQL result, but I can take the result and create the new table from the results. So result from PG. So I have the DDL preview, and everything looks more or less fine. I press import, and that's it. Result from PG is ready. So I click on it, and I see that this data is here. And as you remember, if I press Alt Shift B, I see it in the Database Explorer, and you can see that I have a new MySQL table based on the Postgres result table. So in WebStorm or DataGrip, basically any kind of data, any kind of data grid can be exported to any kind of databases. And it is especially useful when you want to process the result of the long query. You want to filter them, or you want to query this result. It's possible, just create the new data table from that result and query it whenever, in any way you want. Okay, let's go back to the access table. I will hide all the two windows. So this is a copy to database button, very important. Your data. There is an option to transpose your data, which is really handy when you have lots of columns. And by the way, when you have lots of columns, there is another tip I want to show you. So let's run this query, and this query has lots of columns, right? There are a couple of tips to deal with this kind of data sets. First, you can transpose your data, and easily you can see the list of all the columns. Or if you want to navigate to the particular column, you can press Command F12, which will populate the list of all the columns of this data grid, or the result, or the table, or whatever. And if you want to navigate to some particular column, you can just start typing here, replacement cost. You press Enter, and you are navigated here. So again, this is the very important tip if you have many columns. Let's go back to my actor table. Yeah, so you can transpose data here. We, by the way, have the option to transpose tables always where the result contains only one row, as far as I remember. Let's try to test this feature. Transpose. Oh, I don't have it. Data. I'm sorry. Database. Where do I have my database? Database. Editor and viewer. Automatically transpose tables if table have one record. So if I choose this, and when I create the query, for example, limits 1, voila, my rows is transposed, and it's quite easy to see just one row in that particular format. Okay, we can go back to my actor table. Transpose. You can see your table as a tree. It's not it's not super handy as long as you work with relational databases, but for MongoDB and for JSON, it can be really handy. Or you can just show your table as a text. And text, guess what? It uses the information from the extractor. So if you, for example, choose the CSV here, you can see your table in that format. So any text format you are going to choose in the extractor pop-up will be used in this text view. But I prefer to choose table view, of course. And here you have a couple of options. Options are already covered. Maybe one of the important ones in the sort via order by. Base format lets you to detect which particular format is inside your clipboard, so you can paste your data here. Okay, that was the part about data editor. And now let's take a look about navigation a little bit. Since you are WebStorm users, I'm pretty sure that you know all the basic stuff of navigation. But for those who don't know, Shift lets you to search for everything. And as soon as you have the database plugin, you have the database tab. So here you can find any kind of database object. So for example, actor number 1 or whatever. If I press enter, I'm navigated here. Here you can look for major objects like tables, routines, and views. And if you want to find columns or something, you can go to symbols. I don't know, in WebStorm, yeah, they are populated here as well. So if you want to find last name column of actor 2, you can navigate and see this particular column in the DL of that object. I will also cover some tips for not losing your work, and these tips are, of course, general for the WebStorm IDE, but they can be also useful for databases. For example, one of my beloved features is recent files. Every time you want to reopen some tab or reopen some table or query console, you press Command E, you can filter here, and here you are. Another feature I like really much, clipboard history. Shift Command V shows me everything what I have in my clipboard, and I can paste this. And this was my clipboard content like from several minutes ago, and you can paste it here. As you also remember, you don't need to save anything. Every file has its own local history, so you can go to whole local history, see the history, and see all the revisions of this particular file. And we have even search here, so we can search for particular revisions by the word this revision contains. And so all these features work in the database stuff as well. We also have the query history. So every time you run the query, it's stored in the query history. This is the small tiny button here on the toolbar of the query console. And also we have the SQL log. So all the queries you are running from your IDE is stored in your database log file. So you can open it and see internal or external queries. I mean, internal or user queries which were performed just from the IDE, and they are all saved in this particular file. More or less, I think I covered some basics. Maybe one thing I wanted to show you that, as I mentioned before, we also support the MongoDB data sources. So it looks, when you add it to a database explorer, it looks like the same. You have the collections over here. They look like tables, but when you double click it, you see the data populated in a JSON format. but like we create like the table view for it. Let's wait for pairing. Yeah, but if you expand the nodes in the tree mode, you can see it in the tree modes. But if you want to see it as a common table, it's also possible. You can go here and see that is a common table. So the filtering and sorting functionality also works here. And of course, querying works. Maybe one thing I wanted to show you that we implemented the ability to use the SQL for MongoDB. So for example, if you type something like this and press Command Enter, you will get the results here. You can also do something like that's to order by, I don't know, ID. No, ID. Yeah, that works. So if you're not familiar, for example, somebody's not familiar with the MQL language, they can use SQL. And if you want to know which particular JavaScript will be generated from this query, you can go to the context menu and show JS script, and you will see which particular JS script is generated from this SQL. So again, that's the small tiny feature if you're using MongoDB inside your projects. Maybe that's it. I'm pretty sure that I missed some features, but if you have something in mind, please ask questions. And yeah, that's it.
The DataGrip team has done a fantastic job answering the questions. I'll come back to one that if you could touch on a little bit, it's been partially answered. Does DataGrip support schema compare between environments?
Yes, it does. We are now currently working on that. So I have tables, secular and public, so they're more or less similar, I suppose. So let's compare them. So to compare schemas, you need to choose two schemas, go to the context menu, and compare structure. Choose compare structure, and here you will actually see which particular objects are mutual between two schemas and which are not mutual. And here you have the script preview, which will migrate the left part to the right part. So for every particular objects, you can see which differences they have. But we are now currently still working on that feature because every database has its own tiny differences, tiny attributes of the objects. So we are now starting from Postgres. So our aim for the next release is to make Postgres comparison production ready. But for simple database and schemas, it obviously works. So we'll really appreciate those of you who will try this schema compare feature and share the feedback with us, especially if you have some unusual cases and unusual attributes in your database objects.
So that's a call to action to the audience. Try it out as it comes out and give some feedback on it. Do it during the EAP so that we don't ship it and then find out that you wanted something different. Here's the question from me. Refactoring. Can you talk a little bit about what's possible?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the refactoring inside the database console. So you can, for example, rename your aliases or whatever. But refactoring also can use the database objects. I mean, the real database objects, not the aliases.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So, for example, if I have this actor table, and if I want to rename it, I can press Shift F6, rename to the actor view, and I have the options to search in loaded sources, which means that I can search in my routines if they have it, in commands and strings. I don't want to do it. For text accuracies, for example, I don't want to do it as well. Oh, okay, let's leave it. And if I press preview, I see that this objects will be actually touched by the refactorings. So the table should be renamed here. This is the code reference in table guest in public. This is kind of a DDL file, I suppose. And this is all my query console. And if I press do refactoring, so you see that my actor new was red for kind of a moment because it's thought, okay, what is the actor new? I don't know about that. But after the introspection is finished, yeah, my actor new table is here. So
Let
yeah,
me
the
ask you a
refactor.
question on this. I probably should have asked you in advance on this, but if I change my mind and want to do Command Z to undo,
Well, that's not possible. So if I
that's not
now will
possible because
Command
you've
Z
already
here,
committed the
yeah.
transaction.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But this
And by the way, what
ability, if you were sitting in a JavaScript file with a language injection and you have a SQL statement and you have a column name and you think that column is poorly named, then this refactoring will do it there as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was I actually forgot to show, like how you need to operate with SQL injections. So for example, this is the very simple, super tiny like JavaScript project, and if you use pure SQL inside your JavaScript code, you can actually make WebStorm understand what the SQL is about. So for example, this is some kind of a create table statement, and I have the SQLite database over here. What I can do, I can press Alt Enter and say inject language. So say to WebStorm what particular language is used inside the string, and I can say this is SQLite. Okay, I got it. So as soon as my SQLite is injected, as you can see, the string is highlighted accordingly to the syntax. But and we can also do it here with the insert statements. Insert like inject language reference, SQLite. Okay, we are fine. But if I want to run this SQL just from the JavaScript file, it's also possible. I can press Command Enter, which is run the file. And since it's SQL, the WebStorm actually understands that you want to run this SQL against some kind of a file, some kind of a data source. My identifier is SQLite data source, new session. Okay, error, missing database table, user is already exist. Okay, user/1, something like this. I run it, and my table is here. And since the resolve works, so for example, I have this string insert into user. If I press Command B here, I'm navigated to this particular DDL, and I can also navigate to the database tree. So Shift Alt B, as you remember, I'm here. So you ask if the column is spoiled. So let's spoil this column, and it is highlighted over here, because WebStorm understands that you have no email blah, 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 column in your user table. And if you make it correct, it is highlighted in the correct way.
As Dharmaraj just pointed out in chat, running queries from JS itself is great, and I completely agree. It's like you're in the console, which you showed in the first part of the webinar. All those things that you had available there, you've got in the middle of a string in JavaScript.
Yeah, exactly. But there are a couple of limitations, of course, if you have some kind of a query builders, if you concatenate your strings, if you use various variables inside your SQL.
If it's not real SQL. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can use the parameters. So for example, in this particular case, if I run this query, it offers me to like populate the parameters here. So I can do something like, I don't know,
parameters. Yeah.
I don't know, yahoo.com, and here some, I don't know what's that, password. Okay, password 1, 2, 3. I execute it. Something went wrong. Let's do it. Let's try it another one. Maybe. Okay. He wants me to qualify this. Okay. Execute. Voila. And let's check it. User table. Yeah, it's here. So if you even using the query parameters lets you to run the queries from the GS file. But again, if you have a query builder, of course it can be highlighted. Right. But trying to make some kind of a guesses, because we cannot like parse the SQL the correct way.
All right, last question, then we'll do a little bit of transitioning out of here. From Jonathan, if this tool had a view design just like SQL Server Management Studio, I would totally ditch it. Do you ever hear that kind of thing?
view design, but maybe I'm not sure that I understand what it is about.
Maybe it's like the equivalent of a UML diagram or something to visualize.
Okay. So yeah, if so, we have the ability to populate the diagram for the schema. So for example, I can go here, diagrams, show visualization, and you will get the diagram, which will shows you all the tables and all the relations between that tables. So let's hide something. Yeah, so it's possible.
All
You
right.
cannot design your database based on schema. So for example, you cannot add the node here and then build the database, like refresh the database structure and add the table from the diagram. But we will cover some basics here. So for example, now you cannot rename tables from the diagram, but I think it will be possible. But again, if you want to populate the diagram of existing schema, it's already possible.
Hey, Jonathan, follow up with DataGrip by Twitter and give any other points about SQL Server Management Studio and what you were just shown for things that are really important for you. Let's go ahead and start the process of wrapping up. So we'll switch back to my slide. I'll start with a story. Max, I've been doing webinars and going to Python conferences and web conferences for 100 years now. And when I want to blow someone away, I roll out the database tool and I show a local SQLite table and a remote Postgres server connection. And I drag and drop the table from SQLite to Postgres. And it creates the schema, copies all the data, and people look at me like I am someone from another planet.
Yeah, I forgot to show this drag and drop thing. And yeah, that's also my trick as well, because yeah, just drag and drop tables from one database to the other. That's the very cool thing. I agree with that.
Just everybody, it's certainly in the last couple of years, everybody comes up to us and says how much they love DataGrip, and it's usually the first pile of stickers to disappear at the booth. So thanks for all the magic that you've done on this and all the DataGrip goodness that people can add to their JavaScript full stack projects. Before you go, what's the one takeaway idea about DataGrip that you'd like everybody to remember?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. One takeaway idea about DataGrip. Use the power of the fact that DataGrip knows about the source codes of your objects.
Think of your database like you think of your code, because we index both. And all of those facilities now become available.
Exactly.
Hey, do things, I think you might have mentioned this when I was looking at a comment, do things show up in search everywhere?
Yeah, I showed the
right.
Search everywhere, because I'm pretty sure that if you're a WebStorm user, you know about search everywhere. Because otherwise, why you actually pay for it?
So everything that you trust about JetBrains for IDEs for your code, those same things apply for your database development as well. So thanks a bunch, Max. It's been great. But for those of you who stuck around to the end, and just about everybody stuck around to the end because this was jam-packed with good stuff. That's not all. We prepared a special offer for everyone that joined the webinar. If you'd like to try the database plugin, or if you're already using it, you can get 3 months for free using a promo code that we're about to paste. Hey, look, there it is over in the chat right now. Max, do you want to give any details about the plugin and how that works?
No, actually.
Okay. I think you covered it all in the beginning on that. If you have any questions about this promotional offer, give us a little nudge on Twitter. You can see up there the WebStorm IDE Twitter handle. If you'd like to get any more information about WebStorm or about DataGrip, go to our website at jetbrains.com/WebStorm. best JavaScript and web tool on the planet. If you haven't already, please check the WebStorm blog where you can find up-to-date information about news, releases, events. Just a pro tip, keep an eye. New stuff is going to be coming out pretty soon. In addition to educational resources such as this webinar, we'd love your feedback on this webinar. So please feel free to contact us on Twitter or in the after webinar survey, which we actually read very carefully and try to listen and learn. We'll email a link to that in a little bit. That's all from us today. Max, any final points that you want to make?
Just if you have any kind of questions about DB related stuff, just tweet at us. We always read the tweets and we'll be happy to help you. Just stay in touch and we'll be happy with that.
I'll actually close on something that just came in from John Singer. This was a very, all caps, very illuminating webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for participating. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.